I'm one of the business managers at Kallidus, so I've been with the business for about 4.5 years. Actually started out in more of a business development role and moved into more of a face-to-face new business solutions consultant role. So some of you might have heard of Kallidus before. For those of you who haven't, we essentially provide a full suite of human capital management solutions. So support employees within their organisations from the whole end-to-end employee life cycle. So starting at the beginning, with recruitment, all the way through learning, performance, talent management, and succession planning. So I'm accompanied here by my colleague Gordon.
Hi, I'm Gordon McQuoid. I'm the pre-sales consultant for our recruit product at Kallidus. So my background is recruitment. I was once a recruiter and then moved over to the software side and have been with Kallidus for about 3.5 years now, mainly in that understanding requirements and working with customers to get the best out of their ATS when they go into implementations.
So today we're going to be talking about an organisation called Portman Dental Care. They've been a Kallidus customer for a good few years now, and we're going to be talking through the journey they went on for actually finding a new applicant tracking system, some of the challenges they actually faced before they implemented a new tool, and how that system's actually supporting their continued growth as well. So to start with, it'd be good to give you a bit of background on who Portman Dental are. Again, some of you might have actually heard of Portman before. For those of you who haven't, they're essentially a collection of dental practices. So they've got about 90 practices now across the country, and I think they're going to surpass the golden 100 mark come June this year. They were founded about 10 years ago or so. And they've got this really strong or big strategic core objective that they launched 1 or 2 years ago. And that was to try to grow the organisation by 40 practices a year, so quite aggressive growth plans. And they realised they needed a system or a solution to support them and facilitate that growth. So the group's continued to expand, and they have been on track for acquiring these new practices. And what they do is they take over these specialist treatment facilities and centres, usually local family dental practices. They inject some money into and invest into the practice, usually increase the team, and with increasing the team, obviously came recruitment. So they needed to find the right people with the right skills at the right time and place. The actual dental care industry has actually grown quite considerably over the last 3 to 5 years, and that's partly down to this rise for cosmetic dentistry and also a demand for consumer healthcare services as well. So what were Portman's challenges? What were some of the common processes they had before they implemented a new tool? So when we first actually started speaking to Portman, there was actually just one person running their full end-to-end recruitment lifecycle. So there was a chap named Darren Casey, who was their recruitment manager, and he was essentially just a one-man band. So all applications were coming through to him via email. So they had a careers email address on their website. He was managing and screening all those applications, sorting CVs out into multiple different folders, and all reporting was done through good old-fashioned Excel spreadsheets. And I'm sure that's probably quite a familiar scenario for some of you here today. It's definitely a scenario we come across quite often. So at any one time, he was managing about 50 open vacancies, and he was making about 15 to 20 hires per month. So quite a considerable amount of recruitment workload for one individual to manage. So when Darren actually joined the business, and this was a good few years ago, he did actually facilitate the growth on his own by growing the organisation from 30 practices up to 54. So he did grow up by 14, which is a good achievement for one person. But he always said to us when we started speaking to Portman, he always described their recruitment as very 1990s. So no reliance or use of digital tools or technologies. And that was obviously something the business wanted to change. So what were some of their requirements? The first one's fairly straightforward. I'm sure you probably could have all guessed that one. Is they needed a robust web-based platform, a browser-based application that could be accessed anywhere at any time. So as the organisation was growing and they're taking more of these practices, also came this challenge around having a geographically disparate workforce. So allowing the local hiring managers to come to the system, easily manage some of their recruitment and workflows at practice level. They also needed better visibility. And this wasn't just for Darren and the team that he was looking to grow, but also for the senior management teams as well. So the powers that be. Previously, before they implemented the tool, there was a huge lack of visibility. They didn't know, how much they were really spending on recruitment for different parts of the business. and that's something they really wanted to improve. They also needed something that could be easily tracked and used on a mobile device, so both tablet, mobile, and obviously desktop as well. And this was particularly crucial for the practice managers. So each practice has essentially one practice manager or a hiring manager, and they wear many, many hats. They spin multiple plates, and they're very busy people. One small part of their role was to manage recruitment for their front desk staff and also dental nurses as well. So they needed some sort of tool where they could come into a portal, raise requisitions, go through a necessary approval process, manage those vacancies they had and the candidates against them, and confirm any interviews. So that was going to be really important for them too. In line with that is user experience. And user experience is something that we talk about a lot at Kallidus. It's arguably one of our sort of main USPs, and we've tested Kallidus Recruit, the ATS, as well as our other products in our suite, with members of the public, people aged 16 all the way up to 60 years old. We've done a lot of testing with our current customers, and we continue to do testing with our customers. And our UX team essentially set those individuals a number of tasks to complete. And they time them, they record their mouse movements, their audio. Obviously, they've agreed to this. And they then score them against a matrix that our UX team have put together. So quite a scientific approach to user experience. And this was going to be really crucial for those hiring managers. Out of the three main groups, you had the hiring managers, the practice managers, you had the candidates who actually submitted the applications to the website or various job boards, and the recruitment team. The main focus throughout the implementation was actually around the hiring managers, so getting them bought into the idea. It's something that we come across a lot with organizations that don't have an incumbent ATS that they're replacing or a previous system, is this cultural shift or this barrier. So changing people's processes and perception and approach to recruitment and various other processes, that was always going to be a challenge. So getting the hiring managers bought in was going to be key to the success of this project. Ooh, just flicked through a load of slides there, hold on. I'll just scroll down a little bit here. We've also briefly discussed reporting. So having in-depth customizable reports. As I said, Darren was previously relying on Excel spreadsheets. Okay, so they wanted to have a better system to manage those reports, having a centralized area for tracking reporting across all the different practices at head office level and across the whole organization. So tracking things like time to hire, time to offer, cost per hire, candidates by source, so seeing where your candidates are actually applying from. Is it through job boards, directly from the website, heavy reliance on agencies, vacancies by types, permanent or temporary roles, vacancies by the different departments. So having an area and dashboards to be able to control all that reporting easily was going to be a massive improvement for them. And then, the last area is talent banking. So just giving Portman the ability to have a candidate dashboard, or a database. So you may have some candidates who will go through an application process. They may have been unsuccessful. They might have finished second, third, or fourth, but actually you'd still want to retain their records and their details. So as and when new vacancies come up, you can then invite those candidates through to them. So having the ability to search for those candidates within a talent pool and having that talent banking functionality was also going to be really key for them.
Oh.
So that's up to you.
And then over to me. So some of these key drivers for change. So what were kind of the biggest factors that they were facing kind of internally as a business? Obviously, they knew exactly what they wanted in terms of requirements, but they had quite an interesting dynamic in terms of the types of individuals that they were recruiting. So one day they could be recruiting for a part-time receptionist, and obviously the application numbers on those are going to be quite significantly different to when they're looking for an orthodontist. And actually it's more of a kind of search culture and headhunting and approaching and really building up a relationship with those candidates over quite a long period of time. So they were sort of in this sort of constant battle between sort of high volume and low volume vacancies, which made it quite an interesting type of system to be able to support that growth, and obviously the different ways of working and managing those relations with the candidates, and obviously dealing with the volume of those as well. And obviously Darren's next challenge was also growing that recruitment team. So he knew that he couldn't do this by himself. So the next thing he needed to do was recruit people, and their goal was to have recruiters essentially working from home but based all over the country, so that they could then have people closer to practice to build those relationships and get people bought into using the system and actually working with that recruitment team. And he knew that he couldn't just do that with an inbox and a couple of spreadsheets with people based all over the country. And everything at this point was being manually done. So when somebody was applying via the website, he was physically emailing them back to say, thank you very much for your application, and trying to get back to people, having to set reminders before interviews to speak to candidates or email them about the interview the following day. And their sign-off process was all done sort of just via emails. So sometimes it would take so long for some of those requisitions to be signed off internally, he would actually have to start working on those roles because of the demand and the pressures to find those people in the right amount of time within, the directors are saying they needed somebody to be there within 2 weeks when they're opening a new practice or adding a new division. So it was quite time sensitive on a lot of the roles that he was working on. The other side was managing recruitment agencies. So when they bought a new practice, obviously that practice had been working independently for a number of years and had to use local agencies, didn't have a central team that they could rely on, or any sort of the elements that you would get with advertising externally and managing the process. So that was sort of some of the challenges and the sort of main reasons they were looking to implement something that could give them, all of these elements. And some of the results that we had were, quite phenomenal in terms of their growth. So they grew from 60 to 90 practices in the period that sort of the first year of that implementation. And in terms of the role of that system was really focused around sort of hiring managers, as Ray mentioned. So they knew they had a very underwhelming candidate experience, and they knew an ATS was going to support that. They were confident in that. Their biggest concern was actually, how do we get that manager buy-in? Where do we actually get them using the system? So we had quite a novel approach and worked with them and kind of took it a step further from just being a portal they logged in to recruit from. And actually they created a hiring manager toolkit. And this toolkit could only be accessed from within the ATS. So those managers, if they wanted anything relating to recruitment or needed any information, they would log into the ATS and they could get access to all of their policies, all of their refer a friend scheme information, any guides around recruitment as well. So that then made it the place that actually if anybody thought about, I need to recruit someone, it was just first port of call was the ATS and this hiring manager portal. And that managed to, as they sort of rolled this out and grew that within the different practices, that also really enabled them to onboard and train people coming into the organization much quicker as well. They weren't going to different places for different information. So from the hiring manager perspective, raising requisitions then on the system was also going to be, something of a cultural change. And one of the early learnings that they had from that was once they implemented this sort of system to notify managers about approvals and get that through the approval chain, what happened was they realized that actually in a very short space of time, all of those vacancies had these huge bottlenecks. They just still weren't going through the system, even though they had a system now as opposed to email. And when you sort of delved into the information and looked at what was happening, it made sense for them to then tweak and change that process. So actually, what they ended up doing was having different flows of approval, different approval workflows based on the salary level. So the higher level salaries then went through for further approval, and the lower salaried roles just had one level of approval. And that made a huge difference in terms of time to get those vacancies out, advertised, and actually bringing people into the organization. And that, without having a system, they couldn't really work out where those bottlenecks were. And within just a few short weeks, making those tweaks really helped improve that process. Another area that they sort of were focused on was the making offers, and how can you sort of streamline and automate some of those elements of the system as well. And previously they had a very sort of manual process of filling in lots of forms, offer forms, getting contract documentation filled out and then passed over to an HR team. And unfortunately that was just taking a lot of time and difficult to track on its own as well. So what we're able to do was just with the click of a button was allow a recruiter at that offer stage just to click send to HR, and that would pull all the data. So a lot of that data was already in the system anyway, right from the requisition, and the offer form that was then placed online. So what used to take sort of half an hour to fill out and pull all the information together and then pop into an email was then just done purely with a click of a button and data that already existed in the system on the most part. From the recruiter side, obviously there was visibility across all of the vacancies, requisitions. People could see what was happening, where vacancies were being authorized, and could start to prepare and look at that talent bank that was starting to build. So if they could see orthodontist roles that were coming up or in that approval chain getting signed off, they were then able to focus on starting to speak to candidates, get to those people early on in the process as well. When it comes to other things the recruitment team were able to then do was the internal communication. So automation of all of the comms now. The day before an interview, emails are being sent out, text messages sent to candidates, and they can then focus on some of the more value-added tasks as recruiters rather than worrying about that kind of day-to-day administration and putting in calendar reminders and those sorts of things. So a focus of that has been a lot about sort of where can we look at different points in that process and add automated emails out to candidates. Even when it comes to the actual talent bank itself and automation of communications after every sort of 6 to 12 months going out to that talent bank to try and engage them and keep Portman really front of mind. And then in terms of reporting, obviously he had this sort of reporting, this report that he would share with the senior management team every Friday. And it was taking a good sort of hour to 2 hours to be able to put this together every Friday afternoon. And through analytics and pulling data from the system, we're able to automate that and literally took the report that he was taking hours to create and pulling it together with a simple click of a button from our analytics to be able to generate that and share that with the senior management team. And so those are just some of the key learning, some of the key elements of things, of how they're able to improve that recruitment process and enhance that experience for both candidates and obviously the managers as well. Thank you very much.